Welcome to the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, a conversation built to help you address the mess, connect the dots, and defeat addiction. Doing your work matters because if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Life is tough and we're here to help. I'm your host, Ben Derrick, and as always, I'll be joined by Roane Hunter. Let's jump right in.
This may be the best way we've started an episode so far, fumbling around for the record button.
Yeah, trying to figure out they changed our menu. So yeah, it's like, I don't know, try this button. It works.
Well, what else makes this unique is we actually just left being in person, instructing a group of men about intimacy and feeling connected and codependence. I mean, this episode could go way off the rails, but hot off the press, we've had like a 45-minute warm-up before we hit record.
Yeah, like I told you this morning, I'm off my ADD meds, so who knows where we're going to go? It's going to be fun. Yeah.
I felt like you were kind of better, man. Like off the meds, you're better. You're more you.
Maybe okay, maybe so. I don't take ADD medication, but I probably should.
You probably should have for a long time. So let's get into our topic today, because I know people who are listening, they have busy lives, as you referenced this morning, but basically the whole conversation around this episode is going to center around the idea of rejection and how terrible we are at being rejected and how terrified we are at being rejected and how much of our life it actually controls. Pretty fascinating topic and conversation that spills out of that.
Gosh. And, we were talking to a group of men. You and I have worked primarily with only men. And, one of the things we talked about was just this idea of rejection. And so often where men go with rejection, it's tied to sex. Because in our crazy, problematic sexual behavior, as we are now calling it, so much of that is driven by some validation, affirmation from the woman, whether it's a porn woman or whether it's the live porn woman. We're getting some type of validation from that. It's meeting some unknown need that we're not even aware of, but it's there. And then, of course, that'll play out in the marriage with a wife because so often, we talk about with men, it's like sex is my greatest need. And, first of all, sex is not a need. It is a desire. So we got to get that straight first. And then it's like so often, and I say this, I said this in the series that we're doing, that Ben and I did this morning. Men are not codependent on women. We're not codependent on a wife. What we're codependent on is sex. And it's, that old saying that, everybody knows, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's saying. What it's saying is, if mama ain't happy, I'm not getting laid. I mean, that's bottom line. That's what that's about. Because what we will do as men is we will try to please and appease, and we'll do dishes and vacuum floors and all these things, but there's an agenda. And the problem is a wife will begin to sniff that out. And she may be doing kind of obligatory sex, duty sex, just because, she gets preached at. That's what she's supposed to do. And that's terrible. And then eventually what will happen is she's going to begin to push back because she begins to feel intuitively the lack of connection. And so part of our growth as men is really beginning to understand how much of our self-worth, our self-esteem is wrapped around sex. And so Eva had a wife tell her this, I don't know, last week or two, but she told her husband that she wanted him to turn her on emotionally. Oh, that's pretty good, right? Because that's what women want. And women will give relationship to get love, and men will give love to get sex. Anytime I have a guy trying to convince me that it was just an emotional affair. Dude, I throw the penalty flag when that happens and hit the BS button. I'm going, no, dude, you're not some emotional savant. You don't even like talking to your wife. And what you were doing, it was a pre-sexual affair, if we want to call it that. I hate that word because it sounds so romanticized. It was just a pre-sexual interaction, because you had one thing, one agenda, and you will say anything, and you will pretend that you or care about what she's telling you, because you don't. But you got one thing that is driving that. And so unhitching our wagon from sex is one of the greatest things that a man can do, because, there's, like we talked about it this morning, but I mean, we marry somebody just as broken as we are. It looks different on her side of the fence. However, she is suffering from an intimacy disorder, just like we are as men.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of our growth just for every man is beginning to, I would just call it awareness. I've got to become aware of what's going on inside of me. I've got to realize I do have emotions. They are there. And then I've got to begin to speak into things that need to be spoken into. And so often, because of our shame, of our previous acting out or crazy stuff that we did, we feel like, I can't say anything. And you couple that with, if I push back or if I tell her, hey, what you just said was hurtful, then she's going to double down and she's going to be mad, and then sex is off the table. Well, if you can unhitch your wagon from sex and speak into things that need to be spoken into, now you're moving towards an intimate marriage, not just two people living under the same roof, running a married business. Everything's transactional. There's tit for tat, all the stuff. But if I can just begin to speak into those things that I need to speak into, because there's responsibility and accountability on her side of the fence as well. My running buddy that I do a lot of stuff with, we will do some team teaching. Not Ben. He's very prone to say things like, guys, now your wife is trying to tell you. Now she may not be saying it the right way, and you can't hear it, but she's trying to tell you. And dude, I've gotten to where I'm going, dude, hang on. If she's saying it in a way that you can't hear it, that's not a husband problem. That's her problem, and that needs to change. And again, those are the things that we need to okay, if we did bad things, you're still not disqualified from the human race, right? You're still human. You get hurt in relationship by words that are wounding, and that needs to be held. There needs to be accountability. But so often, because of shame and because of this, we've got our wagon hitched to sex, we'll just kind of take it. And if a guy is engaged in his growth process, in recovery, if going to groups, going to counseling, connecting outside of those things with other men, doing life together, well, you know what? In God's eyes, we are in right standing. Our sins are forgiven. I've confessed my sins to God. I've confessed my sins to others, and I am restored in full standing, totally pleasing to God and fully accepted by Him. And I've got to begin to stand in that truth, that reality, in order to speak into things that need to be spoken into.
This episode of Sex, God, and Chaos is brought to you by the Samson Society, a community of men who are tired of pretending and ready to start living in the light. For a lot of us, the hardest part of change isn't admitting we have a problem, it's believing we don't have to face it alone. That's what Samson Society is all about. Brotherhood, honesty, and grace for men walking through struggles. There's no judgment, no posturing, and no perfect people allowed. Just men showing up, telling the truth, and finding freedom together. Whether you're a pastor, a husband, a businessman, or a guy who's just tired of being stuck, you'll find people who get it and who won't let you stay where you are. It's a place where every man has a place at the table. If you're ready to stop hiding and start healing, visit SamsonSociety.com. That's SamsonSociety.com because isolation destroys men, but brotherhood brings them back to life.
The idea, the opposite of rejection is acceptance. And I love what you're putting your finger on here, is that if our primary place of acceptance is our spouse, and not only that, but drilling down a little further, sex with our spouse, then that acceptance is going to be fleeting. I mean, just if you were to just total up the amount of time that you're engaging in sex in a healthy relationship, it's not a large percentage of the relationship compared to everything else.
No, it's not.
So
Yes.
if you're able to say, hey, I'm accepted, and we knew this conversation was going to trend towards community, but how do I experience that? I experience that with like gender that does think kind of the way I think about things. Like, hey, that's not a crazy thought. That's actually a very feminine thought. Hey, that's not a crazy thought. That's a masculine thought. And we're able to kind of steel our resolve against what does feel like, and perhaps is to some level, rejection, and we can weather that storm. I mean, if you want to see a man crumble, you will have him initiate sex and that be rejected. I mean, man, that's when I want to see who a guy really is. And that's when I'm measuring who I really am. When I initiate sex with my wife, she rejects, and she's got her own reasons, because guess what? She has her own life. She's an adult. She has hormones. She has feelings. She has thoughts. It is not her sole responsibility to sex me, right? That's not how that works. So
Yes.
the rejection might not be against me personally, even though it's impacting me personally. There could be lots of other reasons why this is going on, but man, we get tunnel vision, especially as men, when we experience rejection sexually. We make it about us, we pout, we do a lot of very predictable things, but being able to solve that actually doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts way outside of the bedroom, where you're engaging with other men. We didn't have a whole lot of time to talk about that this morning, but man, if you want to talk about a man that was rejected, then you got to talk about Jesus Christ. I mean, he was rejected, and I don't just mean on the cross. I mean all the way to it. He was rejected. Well-boundaried man, yeah. And not only was he rejected, but here's the other side that I want to talk about in our episode today a little bit. He was willing to reject other things. He was willing to execute boundaries, his own personal boundaries, over other things. I will not be interpreted that way. I won't be baited into this argument. I'm not going to heal that person. So rejection works both ways. I would suggest today, and kind of to throw this back to you, if you have the rejection part broken over sex, then it's going to be broken everywhere else too, right?
It's gonna play out in every aspect. There's no doubt. Yeah. And then what happens? Resentment starts to build in. It's going to happen. And like, if your wife says something, and then you kind of just speak into it and say, hey, I don't, that's not helpful when you talk to me that way. And that's boundaries. I'm going to live in my integrity, because that would be true if it was my wife or if it was my neighbor. And when somebody starts demeaning, degrading, shaming, cussing, whatever, that conversation's over, right? But I'm going to live in my integrity. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to have the conversation this way. I want to have a conversation, and I'm willing to have the conversation when we can do this in a good way. And so often it's like, she may say something and you're like, and then you speak into it. And then she may say something like, well, okay, that's fine. But we're not going to have sex for a month. Okay. And when a husband can look at her and go, okay, I'm good with that. And then here's the key to it: not go invoke our superpowers.
I was hoping
S
you were
on
going to
our,
say it.
you knew it was coming. The S on our chest does not stand for Superman. It stands for Sulk and Suck. Because I'm going to go over in the corner feeling rejected, and pout and sulk and be resentful, and like I'm giving my power away. And I'm empowered when I can say, okay, that's fine. We don't have to have sex. I'm okay. And then I go and live my life as a free man, a follower of Jesus, knowing that I am fully loved and totally accepted by him, because I've got a community of men that remind me of that tell me that I know who I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I can just go be okay, man, if you want to change the dynamic in your relationship, and this is Ninja Jesus level stuff, Navy SEAL Jesus, being able to do that and be okay, boy, because it's going to rock her world, because she's used to just using that in a manipulative, controlling way. And that's wrong. That's not healthy. That's very unhealthy sexuality in a marriage. And so, because that's the goal, that's what we're after in all of this. We're moving from unhealthy to healthy, mature, wholeness, all of those. We put a lot of biblical words around it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the goal in all of this. And unhitching our wagons from sex is one of the greatest gifts that a man can give to himself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it is not, if we're not careful, it could sound like reverse manipulation. That's not what we mean. We're not saying, "Oh, I'll be fine for a month. You watch me." It's more of I have unhitched my wagon from that, and that part of our relationship isn't going to control our relationship anymore. And I think something that we really need to dig into today is related to the rejection piece. I can reject this way of relating, or I can reject this activity between us and relationally. I'm not rejecting you. I'd love for you to talk more about that, because in my own life, just admittedly, and that's why I love being on these microphones, man, is because we get to go first and help send that signal to other people, men and women, like it's okay that these things are happening in your life. When I experience rejection, even at a friend level, when I experience rejection, it may just be time constraints or energy level from the other person. They're distracted with other more important things than friendship at the moment. But man, I take that so personally. I am super sensitive towards that rejection, but it's just temporary, circumstantial. Do you see that in your practice, that guys are making that leap?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it this morning, but in our deer camp community, our men's community here, we've had over the years, some guy gets his feelings hurt about something that I said or Phil said or you said or whatever, and then he just like, I'm not coming back. I'm just not going to be a part of this. Well, that. And if that's happening on a friendship level, you can rest assured, multiply that by 100 in the marriage. Because if that's what he's doing, if that's his MO, to get hurt, feel rejected, and then isolate and disconnect, that's a problem. And so the thing about our men's community is we address that, right? We'll sit down with the guy. And then we typically don't find out about it until a year later or something, because he's not going to come and say, "Hey, Ben, what you said, that was really hurtful. Your feedback, whatever." And you don't even know, you had no intent to hurt his feelings, but it did. Well, whose responsibility is that? Is that your responsibility to go track him down? You don't even know you did it, first of all. And Jesus is very clear. Like when you go to pray at the altar, and you realize you have something against your brother, Jesus says, stop praying. It's interesting. There's a lot of times in Scripture when the individuals are told, stop praying, get up and go do this. Right? we don't, we just think we believe in the magic prayer dust or something in evangelical church world. And it's like, no, it's practical. Get up and go and be reconciled. Go and address it. You go and address this because all of us, whatever ministry we're involved in, our first ministry is the ministry of reconciliation. And again, in our men's community, it is the practice, right? And once you begin to do this and you sit with like somebody that's a sane person and you tell them, man, what you said was hurtful. And then, I've had to do that a lot because I say things that offend people. I'm not trying to, but it happens. And then, the guy tells me and I'm like, man, dude, I certainly, I own that. I understand, I validate his feelings, but I'm practicing intimacy. And that's the practice in our groups, in our community. That's what it's all about, right? And so then as I begin to exercise that muscle, now I can begin to do that in my relationship with my wife. But it's practice because it's something that it's foreign to us. We didn't see it modeled by our parents. We certainly don't see it modeled in church or get any kind of healthy teaching around it. And so how do it know? I don't know. I'm just doing what I know to do.
Yeah.
And it ain't working. But that's the whole idea of growth. And when betrayal happens, so often, one of the things that's so hard for women is because in a woman's brain, unless her wiring's off, like acting out sexually, it just doesn't compute in their brain. There's a lot of reasons for that. And women are naive because they've been lied to by men throughout their lives. A man has never been honest with them about how sex works in a man's brain. Their dad wasn't honest. Granddad, uncles, brothers, guys they dated certainly were never going to be honest about it. And certainly pastors, they're never honest about it. And so women basically have been lied to or been given this false narrative that is just so far from reality. And I'm like, a wife discovers the husband's looking at porn. We're in 2026. This stuff is everywhere. It's in the palm of your hand. And it's not naive. But I just go, do you live in the same world I live in? Because this stuff is everywhere. But what it is, they've never had a man be honest with them. And they're shocked to find out that their husband's like secretly watching porn and masturbating. But the reason for that is nobody has ever been honest. And then if it was some kind of affair, some kind of adultery, the thing that she wants to know is, did you tell her that you loved her? Because what she's doing, she doesn't understand how this works in a man's brain, how sex works for us. And so in her mind, you would only have sex with somebody that you say that you love, right? And if you're going to a prostitute, I've heard guys justify that and say, well, I was just paying for sex. Well, that's a problem too. But I'm talking about in some type of an affair over some period of time. And because for her, it doesn't compute and she doesn't understand it. And so she's feeling the rejection because she's personalizing this thing that he was doing since he was 10 years old. And eventually the porn on the screen became live porn with a porn fantasy woman, whether that's a prostitute or whether that's an affair. All that is fantasy, as you said earlier. A real woman, she has emotions. She has her own trauma. She has her own experiences. She has periods. Porn women, fantasy women, affair women don't have periods. It's very different. But because none of that is real, and so she's feeling the rejection because she thinks it's got to be he doesn't love me, I'm not enough, it's this other woman. So the way she experiences rejection is in that way. And one of the things that we will tell a partner over and over and over out loud for many sessions is this has nothing to do with you. It wouldn't have mattered. You could be the supermodel version of Mother Teresa, and he would have still done what he did. That's how this works. But in their female brain and their wiring, that doesn't compute. Now, unless she's, like I say, she could have, her wiring could be off, and that's a reality. I always say, road lizard on hot pavement crazy. And that's what affair women are. Any woman that's going to go cheat with a married man, the wiring's off, because women are not wired for that. But in those cases when that's happened, dude, you start scratching the surface on her side of the fence, and what you find is a lot of trauma. There's usually a deep father wound. There's a lot of pieces there that creates that short-circuited brain that she's walking around with. But a relatively, normal, healthy woman, this stuff does not compute. And the way she experiences rejection, she personalizes what he's doing, and what he's doing has nothing to do with love. And I say this often, it's like, he may have told this other woman that he loved her, but he doesn't even know what that is. If he knew what real love was, you wouldn't be sitting on my couch, first of all. So we got to get that straight. And, the goal is, the hope is, he's going to figure out what real love is, what true intimacy is, all of those things that you both desire. And if you can, like, move beyond the hurt and the pain of the betrayal trauma, and if he is engaged in his work, and both of you are engaged in the work, well, chances are your marriage not only will survive it, but you're going to have a marriage that thrives. And it's the marriage that God created from the beginning. And oftentimes crisis is the wake-up call. And crisis comes in a lot of different forms. But certainly betrayal crisis is one of the worst crises in any marriage. And research shows us, number one is the death of a child. Number two is betrayal, infidelity. And so we work at a high level of crisis. And, one of the things that we often say is, hey, right now, you feel hopeless, you're hurting, it's real. We've got to comfort that hurt. But we can hold hope for you. And if you trust the process, if you trust the story, and he's engaging in his work, well, you're actually going to get the man that you thought you married from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, the process itself, because I've been around it so long, it just makes sense. And I do trust it because I've seen it work in my own life. I've seen it work in hundreds of other men's lives, but man, it does sound backwards when you're sitting in that crisis point. You've had consistent rejection over perhaps a decade of marriage. You're not connected. Stuff's coming out, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, everything's a lie." It is completely disorienting. And what I find most is that the men are asking, "Fix my marriage." How many times do we have to sit together before you're going to fix this? And in between each time we talk, they're like, man, we had a good day, and then we had 6 bad days, man. I think I'm done. I don't know. You and I can talk, but I'm like, whoa, dude, whoa. So it's kind of like we have to shift the target a little bit to, part of saying fix my marriage, that's actually part of the problem, because we don't fix the marriage, man. The fastest path to health is for you to start fixing you, independent of her activity. Which, man, we're attacking that codependence on sex right there. But you said something a couple of minutes ago I want to loop back to, because I think it's really important. It's a question that we don't ask very often. And I don't even know, you said it so naturally, I don't know that you remember, but you said, whose responsibility is this? Whose responsibility is this? If I'm feeling rejected, well, whose responsibility is this? Without that transaction, I'm instantly going to say, it's her responsibility. That's the responsibility. It's her responsibility. And when you looked at me in therapy a couple years ago and said, "Hey man, your wife doesn't make you feel anything," I was like, "Oh my gosh, Roane has finally lost it." I mean, like, what kind of therapist says a person doesn't make you feel some sort of way? That's why everybody walks into this establishment. The point that you're making, though, I find to be very true, but it's a little bit difficult to explain. So I want to pull on your expertise here. Whose responsibility is it? Why are you feeling that way? Did they make you? Can you kind of dive into that line of thinking for a few minutes?
Yeah. One of the books we're using in this, our Thursday morning talks, it's called The Deep Rooted Marriage by Dan Allender and Steve Call. And if you know anything about Dan Allender he works with story, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's what we work with at Deer Camp. We use one of his essays on what's your story, and so, and again, it's just like we've got to begin to figure out our own story, right? My woundings, my toxic shame messages, my false belief system, because that's what's getting tapped into in these interactions. And it could be just a benign little nothing. I always use the example like, my job is to roll the garbage can out to the street on Mondays and Thursdays. And, if Eva comes to me and says, "Hey, you forgot to roll the garbage can to the street." Now, back in the day, what could happen, probably did in some other ways. I don't remember this one particularly, but when she says that, I'm filtering it through my broken grid, my filter that says I'm not enough. I've messed up again, right? And that's an old wound. That's a false belief that I held for many years. That stems back to my own trauma, my own circumstances, growing up in the crazy family I grew up in. And if that taps into that old message, well, dude, I'm going to get defensive and I'm going to say something like, "Well, I hadn't forgotten in, the last 3 months. Why do you have to point out every time I mess up, da, 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 da?" And then, she's going to match that and she's going to like come back. And now all of a sudden, we're in World War III. Armageddon is happening because I forgot to roll the garbage can to the street. Now that's crazy, but that's real, right? Because what happens is, and we all have them, the false beliefs. Scripture is very clear. One of the names of the enemy is the father of lies. And so the lies have been planted in my soul, deep in my heart, in the woundings. And so now, if I don't do my work, and if I don't begin to figure out what's my story, what's mine to own, what I need to change, what I need to work on, and then if she doesn't figure out hers, well, now these old wounds get tapped into, and all of a sudden, rolling the garbage can to the street becomes this huge, crazy conflict. But that happens every day.
Yeah.
But it's because we have not done the work of figuring out, like, what's my story? And, when we do our couples intensives, we have a little scripted set of vows. It's a whole process that we get to this place, but we have them kind of redo the marriage ceremony. And basically it says, I figured out that, I came into this with all these wounds, and I was asking you to fix those, to heal those. Well, that's Jesus work. That ain't wife work. That ain't husband work. And then at the end it says, I realize that I'm going to go vertical with these things, and I'm going to, trust God in my healing journey as I write the end of my own story, and I release you to write the end of your story. And so we're kind of severing this codependent dynamic where, like, man, I'm okay. I'm on a journey of growth. I'm figuring out my stuff, the old lies, the false belief system, the toxic shame. And if she's doing that work, well, now we begin to speak a whole different language, right? Hey, man, when this happened, boy, what I realized, you really didn't mean anything by that, but boy, it tapped that old wound, and boy, I felt that old stuff, and I said something that I shouldn't have said, and man, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. That's not the man I want to be. But now I've got awareness, and now we each have a language to begin to unpack this stuff and stay out of the sandbox, and hitting each other over the head with Tonka trucks. But the core woundings are just essential. And I don't know. I guess I could save everybody money. If you buy the Deep Rooted Marriage book, that's what Dan Allender is talking about, because he's a story guy. And how we operate, even in our practice and our counseling, it's like, what's your story? You've got to own your story. She's got to own her story. And then we got a chance.
Yeah.
But if just one person is doing that and the other is not, it's probably not going to, you're not going to get very far.
Most people, I think I can be comfortable saying this, most people are going to spend a season, a time of resisting that this is actually the solution set, because we just automatically intuit that's not fast. Like fast is tell her to stop doing this. That's fast,
Yes.
The longer,
Just stop it.
The longer path is, oh, wait, I had a story before I ever met her. And then I'll tell you, one of the troubling things for me to have to admit in my own work was part of what attracted me to my wife was not romantic. It was unhealthy. I was attracted to that part of my wife because it was settling something down in me. She didn't know that. And frankly, I didn't know that. But I was operating in a paradigm of, man, being with her fixes that in me. And I want to be with her more because I want to experience that peace and that fixing more often. That is an incredibly selfish motivation to get into marriage.
Is a great one.
Yeah, it's great, and look, we would say as Christian men, as believers, God uses that. God uses unhealthy motivations. Clearly, if you actually read the Bible, you see a lot of poorly motivated people that God actually uses. But asking that question, whose responsibility is this? And then having to follow that train of thought. I just want to challenge our listeners, male and female, today. Choose the harder list. It's so easy to write a list of what the other person needs to be responsible for. I mean, I could do that in my sleep. I could make a list of responsibility for people I don't even like, and not even think much about it.
Yeah.
But if somebody, and these are the conversations I'm more interested in, this is a very direct challenge to our listener base to find people that can actually answer this question honestly to you, because they know you and you've lived life with them. I want to have the conversation where somebody says, yeah, man, okay, Cammy this or Owen this or Shepherd that, your mom this, your dad that, that's fine. What I want to talk about at coffee today or lunch today is, what do you think you're responsible for here? What's on your side of the fence? What's in your yard? And then I want a man that can look across me if I'm like, man, nothing's in my yard. 9 times out of 10, I want him to say, you're lying.
Yeah, you're not going to be friends with that guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So for the men listening, I know that men do tune in. I was sharing this with a guy just a couple of days ago. These are the words of a warrior now. Like this guy in the Bible, David, he did a lot of things, and he was definitely codependent on sex, wouldn't you say? I mean, based on
100%
what the Bible says. But he says in his book, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. See if there's anything grievous in me, and then lead me in the way everlasting." That's a guy who's saying, hey, I'm not even going to write my list. I'm going to hand the power over to that vertical source. I'm going to hand the power over to God, and through the Holy Spirit, understand what God is putting on my list. Hey, man, Ben, that's grievous in you. The way that you use the Bible to shield yourself from vulnerability in groups of men, that's not good. Don't do that anymore, right? That's on my list, right? The way that you passive aggressively pursue your wife in the hopes of having sex at some point. That's not good, man. Don't do that anymore, right?
Yeah.
Now, the trick is if you let God write this list for you, if you're in a relationship with him and you let him write this list for you, then he actually has the power to empower you to change. Your wife does
Amen.
not have enough power in the relationship with you to actually get you to change. She could perhaps force you to modify by making your life miserable, right? But she's not going to give you the power to change. It just never works long term. I mean, that's why we see couples like they're great for 2 years and 2 months, and then the whole system implodes again. And I know I've seen you do it. You look right at the guy and like, you tried to change for her, didn't you? And look where you are. Now you owe me for another intensive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, the circle of life, pays the bills.
That's right.
But dude, you're so spot on in that, every man that walks in somehow is like, okay, give me the list, give me the things I need to do. Let me check these boxes. Okay, how long is this going to take? Well, I always say this process, and this is just the as a Christian, this is the growth process, right? It's much more like Karate Kid. It's not like, I want to learn karate, teach me karate. Well, yeah, okay, go over there and, wax that car. Yeah, go over there and paint that fence. And, this process is very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'll tell guys, you gotta work on this. You gotta try this and do this. And they'll look at me like I'm a deer in the headlights. Usually it's a pissed off deer in the headlights, right? Because like, give me the list, just tell me what I need to do. Well, it doesn't work that way. And, we could throw some Bible terms around it, theology, sanctification, transformational growth, all the things that are there, and it's over and over again, but it's much more of a process, and it's much more of a way of living, kind of what Jesus said. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. And he offers us a much different paradigm than what we are used to in our Western American Christianity. And that's one reason it's so hard, because we've been so brainwashed by the 10 principles, the 5 love languages, all the horse hockey that has gotten thrown at us, and we think it's a very kind of clean and neat kind of a deal. Well, dude, just go read the Old Testament. Look at the stories, and look at the behaviors, and look at the dysfunction, and dude, it's messy as hell, and it's not clean, and that's one reason why like real change is real hard, because it's not. We got to unlearn all that stuff that we were told and taught, and then we got to relearn. We got to be born again, to use a bastardized term. We've got to become like a little child and become open to learning a new way that's very foreign to us.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance. I mean, there's so much nuance, and that's why just slapping a list on something. And I think we could even take a moment here, in case listeners haven't heard about this. The Sex, God, and Chaos book is a process. It's not a list. It's a process. It's a process that you go through, and everybody goes through it at a different pace. Even couples go through it at a different pace. And I just want to encourage and hold accountable the men that are listening to this today that, decided to get healthy. They're sitting with the therapist. They're reading the books. They're going to the men's things. And they've 2 or 3 times responded differently to one of those charged situations. And then they want to circle back and say, man, you know what? I tried this and I kept my cool. I was calm and I said this. I didn't say that's what I want to say, but I said this anyway. And you know what she did? She did the same old that she's been doing since the beginning. And I'm like, hey, buddy, this is a process, like this
is long haul.
That's right. You don't like I hit the Coke button and then a Coke falls out at the bottom of the machine. This is a person. Like, how long have you been in other patterns inside of your marriage? And she may not be where you are. So to be able to say, I'm going to take ownership of where I am. I'm going to Charlie Mike. I'm going to commit to this. And I hope, man, do I hope that she comes along with me, and she's willing to take this journey with me. She may not, but I'm going to go on it anyway. I'm going to take responsibility for what's mine to own. And I'm not going to take responsibility for what isn't mine to own, which can get really scary and really dicey, especially when you're dealing with sexual betrayal. You've got to have a professional sitting in the room to help to determine what is your responsibility and what isn't your responsibility, because those wires get really, really crossed. But to be able to say, moving forward, I'm going to accept the rejection of my wife over my work, especially initially, I think that is probably one of the most important things to determine in the beginning,
Amen.
right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the thing of it is, I've seen this in my own life. You've seen it, and we've gotten to see it in the lives of so many men because of just the community that we have here. When a guy begins to, live a different way, relate a different way, and then he is consistent over time with that, yes, she's probably going to be reactive. She's going to do things out of her hurt and her pain and say things. But if I can be consistent and I can learn to respond, the great thing is God's design for marriage, straight out of Genesis 2, is this idea of like husbands love and wives respond. It is loving her well. If I'm initiating, and if I could, masculinity in this phrase, it is to initiate relationally and emotionally, and she is created to respond, not submit. That's a mistranslation, but it's love and response. And as a man is consistent, what happens, she begins to feel safe and secure, and then she begins to trust, because safety and security have to come first. And why would she ever feel safe and secure when you have wounded her in the most horrible way possible? And but it's the consistency and practice of doing this over this is the long haul, right? I thank God we enter into the crucible of marriage, as you said earlier. Dude, none of us, we don't know squat when we get married, right? Neither person. I mean, if we knew what we knew today somehow, and dude, nobody would ever get married, right? God designed it this way, but it is the refiner's fire. There's no greater like growth lab than a marriage relationship. It is truly the refiner's fire. It is the crucible. And the goal is that refiner's fire, that crucible, ultimately becomes a sanctuary for both people.
To learn more about what you've heard today and to engage with the Sex, God, and Chaos team, visit sexgodchaos.com.